Nuclear-powered solar probe into space. Anti-nuclear activists went to court to try to block the mission, claiming that plutonium might be scattered in the atmosphere if the shuttle should blow up on liftoff. However, a Washington federal judge this morning rejected their move. One of the key experiments on this mission was designed by a Los Alamos scientist. Liftoff is scheduled for 5:35 tomorrow morning Mountain Time, and you can see it live here on TV7.
Well, it is time for the weekend, and Howard's here with the Fiesta forecast and something huge from the garden.
Good thing they don't have...
Flight STS-41 has been on schedule. That's helped the five-man crew avoid morale problems other shuttle flight crews faced when their missions were delayed.
I think the morale is good, and as you get closer to a shuttle launch, the excitement gets greater, and I think our enthusiasm level is peaking just about the right time.
And this is a shuttle crew with true enthusiasm in a wide range of areas. The crew contains an academic football All-American, a Navy SEAL, and a former Missouri Park Ranger.
I look good in a Smokey Bear hat.
Mission specialist Tom Akers will help deploy the European Space Agency's Ulysses solar probe. Akers is a former high school principal, but once his days in space end, Akers would love once again to be a forest ranger.
So I wouldn't mind doing that, going back, and I mean, that's a great way to make a living, you know, being on the river and out in the woods.
Besides his interest in spaceflight, mission specialist Bruce Melnick belongs to the Elks Lodge. He'll also become the first Coast Guard Academy graduate to fly in space.
The Coast Guard has got some tremendous people work for it. We've got great pilots in the Coast Guard. We've got great engineers in the Coast Guard. And for me to be the one that got to get to do this first for the Coast Guard is truly an honor. 3 crew members are rookies. Mission specialist Bill Shepard and Commander Dick Richards will fly their second shuttle missions. Both flew previous Department of Defense flights. Shepard is a former Navy SEAL and a believer in the future of the space program.
I feel very strongly that the people out in the country are solidly behind us, and they want to see us exert leadership in space.
This Discovery launch marks pilot Bob Cabañas' first space trip. Turned down as an astronaut candidate in 1984, the Marine test pilot reapplied 1 year later and was accepted. He recognizes NASA faces problems, but believes NASA will overcome them.
I also see a lot of hard-working, dedicated folks that are extremely bright, doing everything they can to make sure things are right.
Crew members are not worried about the controversial power plant in the Ulysses solar probe. It contains highly toxic plutonium oxide. 22 other space flights use the power plant, most recently Galileo. The astronauts believe it's proven and should not cause a problem. Mike Capps, CNN at the Johnson Space Center.
Louisiana voters must choose today between a Republican Senate candidate with no party backing and a Democrat with backing from Republican politicians. David Duke, a former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard, is running without...
Christmas Bells, 24 richly orchestrated songs and carols featuring the beautiful sound of bells. Christmas Bells, 2 LPs or 2 cassettes, $14.99. Compact disc, $16.99. Here's how to order.
Call 1-800-257-1333. That's 1-800-257-1333. Or send $14.99 for LPs or cassettes, or $16.99 for compact disc. Plus $4 shipping to Christmas Bells, P.O. Box 8660, Atlanta, Georgia.
And trying to get a good handle on...
It's 5 minutes and counting for the launch of Space Shuttle Discovery.
The launch team here at Kennedy Space Center.
CNN Headline News, I'm Kathy Marshall. We hope to bring you more on Discovery's liftoff in just a moment. But first, news about the budget fiasco in Washington. Millions of federal employees don't know where their next paycheck is coming from. The government lost its funding at midnight when President Bush refused to sign an emergency spending measure. Bob Franken reports there could be a weekend of fierce politicking ahead on Capitol Hill.
Since the president is refusing to sign the congressional action into law, tourists will not have access to the monuments they came to visit in Washington. but the Capitol will be open for business because the government is in a financial crisis.
We need to pass this resolution to avoid total chaos.
The House and Senate did pass the legislation necessary to temporarily keep the federal government funded, but the President decided not to sign the resolution, effectively shutting down all but essential federal services. Announced after Congress acted in a late-night statement by the President, read by White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater.
The hour of reckoning is at hand. At midnight tonight, the Congress of the United States must face up to the shutdown of government services and resulting confusion that will be strewn across this land because we could not produce a budget.
Throughout the day, top White House officials shuttled around the Capitol, talking with congressional leaders about a revised budget deal, which was the price demanded by the President for his signature. Congressional leaders have decided they'll come up with their own budget without administration participation.
Is this a game of chicken with the White House at this point?
I don't know. It's not a game of chicken in any event, with anyone. Congress is being kept in Washington over a long weekend. The members are asked simply to wait while their leaders try and revise the massive budget deficit deal the House resoundingly defeated. To some degree, this is a replay of last weekend when some of the nation's leaders struggled and finally came up with the elusive budget deficit agreement. The big difference this weekend is they're trying to repair the damage. Bob Franken, CNN, Capitol Hill.
Louisiana voters must choose today between a Republican Senate candidate with no party backing and a Democratic candidate with backing from Republican politicians. David Duke, a former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard, is running without official GOP support. The official Republican candidate dropped out Thursday, apparently to weaken Duke's campaign. Duke is running against incumbent Bennett Johnston, who's seeking a fourth term. 8 Republican senators have crossed party lines to endorse him. U.S. and Soviet negotiators are chipping away at a byproduct of the Cold War, the stockpile of superpower weapons. U.S. Secretary of State James Baker and Soviet Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze have completed a pact on conventional weapons and resolved some issues in a nuclear weapons treaty. Baker says there's a good chance they'll complete the second treaty in time for a December summit.
It's still very possible that we would be able to complete a strategic arms agreement during the balance of this calendar year.
The lawn of the United Nations is littered with remains from the nuclear arms race, now in the form of a sculpture. These weapons were put to pasture according to the terms of past superpower treaties.
They have been beheaded and destroyed not by the artist's fantasy, but by the will of the governments and people of those countries where they once came into being.
The Conventional Arms Pact may be signed in Paris next month. Negotiators in Geneva are continuing work on the nuclear arms treaty. Western diplomats report Iraq may release a number of British hostages today who've been held as human shields at key installations. They did not know how many, but the British Embassy in Baghdad tells CNN it has no knowledge of an imminent release for any Britons held anywhere in Iraq. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein may let Soviet citizens trapped in Iraq leave. Hussein reportedly told a Soviet envoy there's no political reason to keep Soviets in his country. The envoy went to Baghdad seeking the release of more than 5,000 Soviet nationals in Iraq. He also delivered a private message to Hussein from Soviet President Gorbachev. The State Department says about 300 people have signed up for an American freedom flight due to leave Kuwait on Wednesday. That includes American nationals and family members born in other countries. Washington says at least 900 Americans are still trapped in Iraq and Kuwait. Iraq finally had its say before the United Nations. Yesterday, an Iraqi diplomat accused the U.S. of trying to control world oil supplies. But as Jeannie Most reports, most UN members disagree.
What was expected to be an Iraqi speech ended up as a freewheeling debate, with Iraq accusing the U.S. of trying to control the world.
This is just another form of world dictatorship.
The representative of Iraq has just abused us all with a caricature of history.
Much of what the Iraqi said was too much for those listening. After Iraq accused the U.S. of imperialism, Kuwait's representative said, who invaded whom? Who is occupying whom? And he waved a report on conditions in occupied Kuwait.
Young children, 2 days ago, aged 9 till 15, were shot dead. Why? Because they said, God is great and free Kuwait.
speaks about crime. He should be ashamed of himself.
Iraq had accused the U.S. of manipulating the UN Security Council. The U.S. called that an insult to the other members of the Council, and the Soviet Union seemed to agree. Once again, Iraq tried to score points with the double standard argument. Why has the U.S. come down so hard on Iraq when it lets Israel ignore UN resolutions? And just down the hall in the Security Council, the PLO echoed that argument during a debate on the occupied territories. But most governments are less worried about a double standard than the singular threat posed by Saddam Hussein. The Saudi ambassador used especially tough language, speaking of how Kuwait had once been so generous with Iraq, supporting Saddam Hussein in his war against Iran.
It seems that Kuwait was feeding a snake which would swallow up its neighbors.
Leaders from around the world have denounced Iraq from this podium. The U.S. ambassador suggested to the Iraqi representative
that he reports that message carefully to his master in Baghdad.
in their speech to the General Assembly, the Iraqis may not have broken any new ground. They sure managed to get under a lot of people's skins. Ginny Moe, CNN at the United Nations.
We'll now take you to the Kennedy Space Center, where NASA is getting ready to launch the Space Shuttle Discovery. There has been some concern throughout the morning about weather conditions there. Apparently those have been checked, and the engineers say that should not be a threat to this morning's launch. And we're told launch is about 8 minutes away. CNN Headline News hopes to bring you that launch as it happens, so stay with us. One of Lebanon's leading newspapers says Anglican Church envoy Terry Waite and some other Western hostages may be freed next week. The paper quoted unknown sources and mentioned only Waite by name. 13 Western hostages are believed to be held in Lebanon. A distant relative of Nelson Mandela has reportedly been killed in a hand grenade attack in Soweto. The African National Congress says earlier reports that the 18-month-old girl was the apartheid leader's great-granddaughter are false. The first trial of an American art gallery for obscenity ends in acquittal. The Cincinnati Contemporary Art Center and its director were found not guilty of obscenity charges yesterday, stemming from the exhibit of photographs by the late Robert Mapplethorpe. The exhibit included sexually graphic images and pictures of nude children, but the jury found the photos have artistic value and are not obscene. The National Football League has slapped the Cincinnati Bengals head coach with a record fine for excluding a woman reporter from the locker room. Sam Weich will have to pay 1/17 of his salary for barring a USA Today reporter from the locker room after last Monday night's loss at Seattle. The fine could total about $30,000. The controversy over equal access for women in the locker room is not only brewing in the United States. Sasa Petrosic reports on a similar case north of the U.S. border.
On the field, Winnipeg's Blue Bombers were getting ready for a game against Toronto. Off the field, they were tackling another issue, blocking this reporter from doing interviews in the team dressing room because she's a woman.
The issue simply is that I want to be able to do my job as best I can, and I don't think I can do that without the same kind of access that the other reporters have.
Here in the Saskatchewan Roughriders dressing room after a most dramatic victory.
Dressing room interviews have become a regular part of professional sports. In fact, the CFL rules guarantee the reporter's right to talk to players in their underwear or less. Trouble is, some reporters are women and some players are shy.
You know, I don't really feel like talking to anybody when I'm naked, and I think the locker room's our place.
I don't think a reporter in a women's tennis tournament, male reporter would come in and watch someone else shower right after the game, you know, so same situation here.
Winnipeg's general manager agreed. He told Robin Brown while she may be equal journalistically, he had other problems.
I think we're a little bit different, aren't we?
Cal Murphy told her she would have to do her interviews outside, violating a CFL rule which says all reporters must be treated equally, a rule other teams follow. But the CFL didn't complain. In fact, it supported the manager.
She will have access to any player she is.
But not the same access.
Not the same access, no.
Don't you think this is unfair?
I have no comment on that.
As for Robin Brown, she vowed she'd try to get into the dressing room anyway, while her boss and the team's boss try to find a compromise. CBC Radio says it'll accept nothing less than equal access. The team says it'll accept nothing less than total privacy from female reporters. And both sides say the only possible compromise might be to kick everybody out of the dressing rooms who isn't there to get dressed. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Scientists may have to change their assumptions about how the AIDS virus is spread. A new California study indicates a higher than expected number of gay men may have contracted AIDS through oral sex. Researchers have generally considered oral sex only a potential risk. The California study did not address the risks of oral sex between men and women. Hurricane Klaus has been downgraded now to a tropical storm. That's after it left 6 people dead and 1,500 homeless on the island of Martinique in the Caribbean. The National Weather Service says Klaus will likely be centered about 170 miles northeast of St. Thomas this afternoon. When we come back, 2 Connecticut brothers make their living making dirt. First, to check on the weather.
A winter storm shows up on the weekend weather map for Montana and Wyoming. That means some snow in the mountains and rain below. And a cold push of air accompanies the rain and the snow. While a warm, sunny day is expected in the west, and from Texas to the New England states, expect temperatures in the 80s.
Different parts to play in the American Red Cross. Play your part.
This is CNN Headline News.
New Mexico is a land of blue skies, green forests, and incredible wildlife, and we want to keep it that way. I'm Dan Sterling. Weeknights on Action 7 News, Earth 7 shows you the issues and sometimes brings you the solutions to New Mexico's growing environmental problems. And we examine the different ways that we, as Earth-conscious New Mexicans, can help. Join me for these important environmental stories on Earth 7, weeknights at 5, 6, and 10 on Action 7 News.
Remember the time we reunited the people?
Oh, the brother and the sister?
The brother and the sister who had not seen each other in 20 years. I think it was at least 20 years.
At least 20.
We flew him in from London.
Yeah. It was really a surprise. It was. Those are the moments that I really love, and I think everybody else does too, the genuine surprises.
Live with Regis and Kathy Lee, weekdays at 10 on KOAT 7.
Travel through time at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History. Ever wonder how big some dinosaurs were? Or ever wonder what it was like when dinosaurs roamed the earth? Or ever wonder what it's like helping people have fun? Visit the Natural History Museum in Albuquerque. It'll make you wonder.
We're open every day.
This is Al.
I'm Al.
Al drives to work and from work every day alone. Now, if Al ride-shared with just one person, he'd save enough money on parking, on gas, on car maintenance to buy a new frost-free refrigerator. And if Al would ride-share with just 2 people, he'd save enough money to buy the refrigerator and a trip for him and his wife to sunny Florida. And if Al ride-shared for a couple of years, well, who knows?
Brought to you by KOAT 7.
We're joining now at the Kennedy Space Center, where they're getting ready to launch the Space Shuttle Discovery. We're told at this point they're in a temporary hold at 31 seconds into the countdown. Let's go to Mission Control and hear the latest.
Payload interface duct. We're discussing that right now.
Yes, it appears to be our flow control valve. It's
T-minus 31 seconds and holding.
It was stable after we did our payload bay reduction. It was just fine, and then it started cycling low.
Okay, do you feel you can meet the minimum limits if we continue on either successfully or have to scrub?
No, I think we can, it's cycling in and out. If it stays up, we can try to control the valve manually. and bring it up to the highest range.
Okay, copy. SPE, do you have any problem with proceeding?
Well, I'll need to ask them out back.
Now, you may have just heard some talk there about a flow control valve, and we're told at this point that is causing some concern for engineers at NASA. So the launch is held at 31 seconds. While NASA checks into that problem, Headline News will continue to follow the launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery, and we'll be bringing you more throughout the morning. Right now, we turn to other news of the business sort. And it happens to be a dirty job, but two brothers in Connecticut don't mind doing it. The job is making dirt. Mark Levinson reports now the brothers work a little faster than Mother Nature.
The city, land of busy streets and crowded shopping malls. Land of brick, steel, and concrete. As roads and buildings appear, soil and grass disappear.
The farms have disappeared, and it's all become built up, and they're utilizing land that just doesn't have soil on it. And that's probably the main reason we have to make more.
Dirt making isn't just a natural process anymore. At Connecticut's Brookside Nursery, Bud and Dave Volpit make 20,000 cubic yards of soil a year.
We do have a go now for the launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery.
And liftoff of Discovery and the Ulysses spacecraft bound for the polar regions of the sun.
Roll pump ambition.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
This is Mission Control. The roll maneuver puts Discovery into the correct launch plane. Guidance officer confirms a good roll maneuver. Engines now throttling down in preparation for Discovery's passage through the maximum aerodynamic loads area. Auxiliary power units, all three looking good. Discovery's velocity now 2,300 feet per second.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Go at throttle up. Go at throttle up.
The go at throttle up call means that everything is working well aboard Discovery. All engines now back at 104% performance. Velocity.
You're looking at live pictures now from the Kennedy Space Center, the launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery, the first shuttle to go up since April. Now, 5 astronauts are aboard for this 4-day trip. Their mission to send the Ulysses satellite on a journey to study the sun. CNN Headline Sports is next.
This is CNN Headline News.
Top off a trip to the Balloon Fiesta with a fun-filled day at the Rio Grande Arts and Crafts Festival, the first 2 weekends in October. Shop from the works of 150 fine artists and craftsmen. Enjoy live entertainment, including Linda Cotton, the Watermelon Mountain Jug Band, Biosecco, and more. Have your festival poster signed by Jackie Evans daily from 10 to 4. The Rio Grande Arts and Crafts Festival is this weekend and next, all happening under the big top at I-25 and Paseo del Norte. Admission $2. Children under 12 are free. Don't miss it.
If you're made the helpless victim of someone else's drug or alcohol problem, it becomes your problem too. Join the Red Ribbon campaign coming October 20th and help fight drug abuse in New Mexico. You can sponsor a Red Ribbon dance at school, display a red ribbon on your front door or mailbox, advertise special discounts to customers wearing red ribbons. For more information, call 1-800-675-2275.
Sponsored by New Mexico Parents for Drug-Free Youth, the New Mexico National Guard, and KOAT 7. Helping design ways to protect America's future has been a lifetime career for rocket engineer Manuel Fuentes.
And you notice?
Today, as a volunteer, he's busy helping companies design meaningful ways to help their employees prepare for retirement.
How am I going to adjust myself?
Join Manuel Fuentes in volunteering to help others. Volunteering, the greatest gift of all. This public service message brought to you by KOAT 7.
What would you call the first fiesta this week of ballooning? Fiesta, fiesta. So nice it was named twice. It's an afternoon of entertainment at Duke Stadium. I'm going to be there along with my very good friends, Johnny Canales, Little Joy La Familia, and the Texas Tornadoes. It's going to be a whole lot of fun to be had by all. It's a family event. There's even going to be comedy. That's my part. It's October 6th, which is this weekend. Hey, you want to hear something funny? Well, then come to the fiesta, man.
I'm Jerome Jurenovich, CNN Headline Sports. The National League Championship Series is now even at 1 game apiece. Paul O'Neill provided the offense and defense to lead Cincinnati to a 2-1 topping of Pittsburgh. O'Neill drove in 2 runs, including this one when Barry Bonds misplayed this fly to left, and then helped Tom Browning outduel Cy Young favorite Doug Drabick when he killed the Bucs rally by gunning down Andy Van Slyke at third. Games 3, 4, and 5 will begin Monday at Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh.
Nobody dominated this game except for the sun and the shadows out there. You couldn't see. It was a tough game. We're just happy that, you know, with the defeat we had last night, it was tough. We had a tough loss last night, and we're just glad to get this win today where we can work hard the next 2 days and go into Pittsburgh and hopefully win a couple games there.
The American League Championship Series begins Saturday night in Boston between the East champion Red Sox and the world champion Oakland A's. Boston ace Roger Clemens will take his 21 wins to the hill for the Sox, while Dave Stewart, a 22-game winner, faces the challenge of the Green Monster.
Really bothered by Fenway that much. I've had, you know, some pretty good success here, and you know, I feel if I stay within myself and do the things that I do best, then I'll have some success here.
The NFL has hit Cincinnati head coach Sam Wyche with the largest fine ever levied against an NFL coach. Wyche was set back $30,000 for denying a woman reporter access to his team's locker room after their loss to Seattle on Monday night. The golf shot of the day belongs to Beth Daniel, who nailed a 3-iron from 174 yards away to ace the par 3 13th during the second round of the Centel Classic. Daniel's 63 moved her 2 back of leader Patty Sheehan. Only 1 game on the ice, the Penguins beat the Capitals. Jerome Jurenovich, CNN Headline Sports.
This is CNN Headline News.
This is Howard Morgan with the forecast for Saturday, the 6th of October. Now posted on the board are Saturday morning's lows and Saturday afternoon's highs. It'll be fair to partly sunny in the northern portion of the area, but from there on southward it'll be partly cloudy. Most areas will have light variable breezes in the morning, but increasing to southwesterly winds about 10 to 20 miles per hour during the afternoon hours. The temperature should reach into the 70s in southern Colorado, mostly near 84 Corners area, near the low 80s west central area, while the south and west will see highs in the 70s and 80s, and then quite a bit warmer, low 90s in the south, even higher elevations, warm mid 80s. South and east with clouds will be in the low 90s, partly sunny in the eastern plains area, 80s and near 90 for highs, while the north and east will be partly sunny, 80s for highs, cooler, low 70s northward into Colorado. The north central area, 70s and 80s for highs, partly sunny here, and partly sunny down through the Ustantia Valley, 80s for afternoon readings. For Albuquerque itself, it'll be a fair to a partly sunny day, light breezes in the morning, but increasing winds in the afternoon, and a high of 83 degrees.
Viewers of ABC's daytime drama All My Children may want to stay tuned after the October 18th episode to see a familiar first family face. A storyline on the show features a child with leukemia who needs a bone marrow transplant. At the end, Barbara Bush will be featured in a public service announcement for the National Bone Marrow Registry. The First Lady got a visit from Princess Diana yesterday. The princess was in Washington for a charity event benefiting Grandma's House, a local home for children with AIDS. She paid a visit there as well and met another First Lady of sorts, the 3-year-old girl who was the first resident of the home. The two took a ride in Diana's Rolls Royce. The princess also cut the ribbon at the opening of a similar home called Grandpa's House. A popular cartoonist is using his funky Winkerbean comic strip to encourage more airtime for football halftime shows. In today's strip, cartoon character Harry L. Dinkle, known as the world's greatest band director, urges readers to mail in a coupon to ABC Sports. It says halftime belongs to the bands. A spokesperson for ABC Sports says the network does try to include bands in at least part of its halftime show. Driveway basketball hoops are a regular sight across the United States. So what happens when a town bans the hoops for unsightliness? Jim Hill has the story.
For 16-year-old Mike Epter, the carefree days of layups, hooks, and jump shots in his front yard mean a lot.
It gives me great satisfaction when
I can do that left-handed layup.
But the politicians who preside over Garden City's quiet, tree-lined streets have banned these freestanding backboards from front yards. They've upheld a 65-year-old law that prohibits unsightly objects.
We accept the fact that on ourselves that we will not have these kinds of things. It's a sort of self-discipline that this village has that I think is terrific.
But not everyone agrees. 70 homeowners now have illegal hoops. They cried foul, signaled timeout, and asked for another vote by village trustees. They got it, but lost in spite of a hard effort by trustee Jack Curry.
Basketball hoops are as American as apple pie, and I think kids playing basketball in the front yard, they're with their neighbors, they're at home. That's where they should be.
Village elders trace the strict zoning here to the town's founding in 1879, which, by the way, is 12 years before James Naismith invented basketball. Even so, this is the home of none other than New York Knicks retired legend Dave DeBusschere. He's been sidelined by an out-of-town trip, but his wife has picked up the ball for him.
Where else are the children supposed to play? Do they want them out on the street, or would they rather have them in their yards?
With the swish of a two-pointer, now an endangered sound in front yards here, angry homeowners are pushing this game against City Hall into overtime. They say they'll now demand the trustees' decision be overruled by village referees, the appeal board for zoning. If a zone defense doesn't work, basketball supporters say they'll go man-to-man and try to defeat the trustees when they come up for re-election. If that fails, the ball game will be over, and a small chapter in hoop history will have dribbled to a close here in Garden City. Jim Hill for CNN, Long Island.
And finally, a record is still in motion in Meridian, Mississippi. 26 people started riding the carousel September 21st. It came down to 15 riders last Thursday, breaking the old record. 14 riders are hanging in there until tomorrow to establish a new record. The ones who do will split $9,000 in cash and prizes. That is our report for this half hour. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kathy Marshall. We leave you now with another look at this morning's shuttle launch.
4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Discovery and the Ulysses spacecraft bound for the polar regions of the sun.
Roll pump ambition.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
This is CNN Headline News.
Anchorwoman Diane Anderson. Writer. Reporter. Award-winning journalist. With the experience to cover the news from every angle. Part of a solid news team devoted to professional.
And the Ulysses spacecraft bound for the polar regions of the sun.
After a series of failed launches, NASA today got a much-needed success. The takeoff went nearly according to plan. Questionable weather and a minor technical problem caused about a 12-minute delay. The primary goal of the 4-day mission will be to deploy the Ulysses space probe to the sun. Discovery passed its most critical test last night during fueling operations. Previous shuttles were grounded because of fuel leaks. The well has run dry. The U.S. government is out of money for now. Federal agencies are preparing to shut down today because President Bush refused to sign legislation to keep the government funded for a
probe called Ulysses on a 5-year odyssey to the sun. But not everything is going smoothly for NASA these days. Here's NBC science correspondent Robert Bissell.
2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Discovery and the Ulysses spacecraft bound for the polar regions of the sun.
Discovery thundered into the clear Florida sky, proving that NASA could launch at least one of its 3 shuttles. A telescopic camera provided an excellent view as the solid fuel rocket separated from Discovery. NASA officials were obviously happy that the 5.5-month period with no flights was over.
The mood, I don't know whether you would say is one of euphoria or relief.
6 hours into the flight, the crew members carried out their main objective. They released the Ulysses spacecraft into orbit. Later, rockets propelled Ulysses on the start of its 5-year journey through the solar system. The craft, built by the European Space Agency, will study the sun by orbiting its north and south poles. Despite today's success, NASA still has problems with its other 2 shuttles. Columbia is on the other launch pad, grounded by a hydrogen leak. NASA engineers do not understand the leak despite months of study. NASA officials said today they did not believe that the 3rd shuttle, the Atlantis, is damaged. Wednesday, workmen accidentally left a 70-pound beam inside the engine compartment. It banged around as the shuttle was being raised to an upright position. Discovery is expected to land from this mission on Wednesday. NASA will attempt to launch Atlantis early next month. Garrick?
Bob, a success, an important one for NASA today, but what is the longer-range forecast for NASA in the months, years to come?
Well, like a lot of everything else in nightly news tonight, it has to do with the budget. And NASA got one of the biggest increases of any federal agency, and it has to be a tempting target for cuts with all of its problems. The space station, the plans to go to Moon and Mars, all of that is very much in jeopardy. Garrick?
Bob Bazell, thank you very much. Next, immigration, a question of quality as well as quantity. We'll be right back.
After takeoff, the shuttle launched the nuclear power probe Ulysses on a 5-year trip. It will make a swing by Jupiter, then head toward the sun. And there's word out of Lebanon today that some Western hostages may be released next week.